Okay, hello Cloud Gurus and welcome to this lecture. In this lecture we're going to look at latency routing policies, and this is a lab, so you'll need to log into the AWS console. But before we do that, what is a latency-based routing policy? Well, as you might guess, latency-based routing is basically allows you to route your traffic based on the lowest network latency for your end user. So which region is basically going to give them the fastest response time. So to use latency-based routing, you create a latency resource record set for your EC2 or ELB resource in each region that hosts your website. And then when Amazon Route 53 receives a query for your site, it's going to select the latency resource record for the region that gives the user the lowest latency. And then Route 53 will then respond with a value that's associated with that resource record set. So what does it look like? Well, let's say I've got a user in South Africa and they're sitting down in Cape Town, maybe in Sea Point on the beach, and they want to go to my website. So they type in hellocloudgurus.com on their laptop and it connects up to Route 53. And Route 53 determines that there's a 54 millisecond latency to go to EU West 2, which is London. So it's going almost directly up to London. But it also determines that it would take 300 milliseconds to go to my Sydney site, because basically it's got to go across the Indian Ocean, then across Australia. And that's probably not how the routing would actually work, but you get the idea. It's got to go a lot further than just going straight up to London. So in this example, Route 53 would send the traffic to EU West 2 because it's going to have a much lower latency than sending it over to Sydney. And for the user, it's going to feel a lot faster. So let's log into the AWS console and see how we set this up. Okay, so I'm in the AWS console. I'm just going to click on Route 53. I'm going to go into my hosted zones and I'm going to go into Hello Cloud Gurus. And in here, we've still got our A records from our last lab. So just go ahead and hit delete for those. And now we're going to create a new record set, and we're just going to leave it as the naked domain name or the zone apex record. And I'm going to make it an alias and I'm going to point it to my different elastic load balancers. And again, sometimes it can take a little while to load. Okay, so there we go. So I'm going to set one up for London first of all, and I'm going to change this over to latency. And then it says in here, please specify a region. So if you forget the name of your region, you can actually just check up here in the DNS name of your load balancer. So here we see EU West -2. So I'm going to go for EU West -2, and I'm just going to call it my London region. And then I'm going to leave everything else as default and go ahead and hit create. And then I'm going to do exactly the same thing again. This time I'm going to create a record set. I'm going to leave it as the zone apex record. I'm going to point it at my Sydney elastic load balancer. I'm going to use latency based routing, and then I'm going to specify a region, which is going to be Southeast. And again, if you forget it, just go over to your load balancer. I'm pretty sure it's Southeast 2. Yes, it is. So go over to Southeast 2, and we'll just call this my Sydney region. Go ahead and hit create. And so now we've got two resource records for our naked domain name. One's going over to EU West 2, the other one's going over to AP South 2. So let's go ahead and open up a new tab. So I'm in a tab and I'm just going to refresh it. I'm doing this from London as we record, so in theory it should go straight to my London web servers, which it is doing. Now to test this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to VPN into Sydney and try it again. So this here is Viper VPN, great VPN client. I've been using it for a long time now. It's fantastic. So this is Viper VPN. It's one of my favorite VPN clients. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in and go show all server locations. I'm going to connect into the Sydney region, so you can see 314 milliseconds. I'm going to go ahead and connect to that. And so for all intents and purposes, when Route 53 sees me making my website request, it's going to think that I'm in Sydney now rather than in London. So I'm just going to Alt Tab back over to Google Chrome. Okay, so I'm in Chrome. I'm just going to do a refresh. And it's taking it took a little bit, but there you go. It is automatically saying this is Sydney web server. So it's detecting that in terms of my latency, because it sees my endpoint, sees me being inside Sydney now, it's going to be quicker to send me traffic through Sydney. The reason it took a little bit of time is basically this is all going through a VPN. So I'm going to Sydney twice effectively. So that's it for this lecture, guys. If you have any questions, please let me know. If not, feel free to move on to the next lecture where we cover failover routing policies.